Peace. Welcome back to the Black Philosophical Society. I am your host, Black Jesus. We're going to get back to that. We're going to talk prophecy real quick, though. I noticed a lot of, I'm sure we've all noticed, if you know anything about the Israelites, they'd like to talk a lot about prophecy. But before I get into that, I forgot to mention one of the good things that the Israelites do. I really should have mentioned this one instead of the thing about the music. That could have been a side note, but for some reason this didn't occur to me till after I made the video. I think it's a very important thing that they do right. The Israelites do encourage our sisters to be natural, right? And to wear dresses. Two things that I think are very positive, right? Y'all have heard me speak on both of those things before in the past on the Health Hop Network. So I got to give them their props for that because that is important. And they have successfully gotten a large number of black women to embrace their natural beauty and to dress in a healthier way. This ain't about gender roles for me. Like that's the problem that they have, right? Their reasoning behind these things are not very rational all the time, but they're good things nonetheless to do. And there is a black pride, black power sentiment behind it, even though it's biblically based and it's really bizarre. A good thing, regardless, that they encourage our women to do that. So, yeah, I just wanted to make sure I mentioned that because I thought that was an important thing that they do right, and I forgot to mention that on the previous video. But yeah, anybody confused about those things, we can talk about them later. I didn't want to spend too much time on that. I've talked about all that shit in the past. Why skirts are healthier. Probably for everybody, by the way. Like, can I say that? That I would love to feel my balls blowing in the breeze every once in a while. Like, I can imagine that that's a great feeling. Like, it'll make me gay because I want to feel some air coming to my crotch. Like, crazy that women would not want to do that. I had to argue with women about wearing skirts just for them to put them on and tell me how much more comfortable and cool it is. Yeah, of course it is. Anyway, kind of jealous of it myself, but I've agreed to the social contract. So go will you. That's how I feel about that. But it's for health reasons more than anything. So big up to them for that. Now back to this bullshit. Right? Because y'all love to talk about the prophecy. Deuteronomy 28, right? Christians don't get into prophecy quite as much as our Israelite brothers and sisters. Some of them do, depending on what they're talking about. I know I say this all the time, but it's true. I was just talking to somebody on Facebook and they start going into the prophecies and what Israel gonna do and what's gonna happen and all of this nonsense. They weren't Israelites though. It was a Christian that I was talking to. So there's some out there that are looking for these signs and wonders. Those are things that we talked about when I was in church. We were looking for things to happen in Israel as a sign of the times. Get the importance of it to people who believe in the Bible. But problem with it is, has been pointed out numerous times, as the prophecies are too vague to be attributed to anything divine. And it's very easy when people are not thinking critically for you to read some scriptures about people coming to Egypt again on ships, right? And you can tie this into slavery in America, and it makes sense to people, like I said, when they're not using their brain. But if you think about that a little bit, that's not convincing. It should not be convincing to anybody. Somebody reads you in a book where it says you're going to go back to Egypt again on ships. You should, and they tell you this is from God, right? God is saying this is going to happen. And you should be asking, why does it say Egypt then? Right? And I already know what's going to happen as we go through, after when people hear this. They want to brush things that I'm saying off as being ridiculous. And it just amazes me that theists consistently limit their God and make their God smaller than what he's supposed to be. As soon as something uncomfortable comes up, right? As soon as they get hit with a topic or a problem they can't resolve, all of a sudden God is not omnipotent and omniscient and omnipresent anymore. He's limited, right? So just watch how it happens as we talk about this. Watch how they're going to try to reduce God to being less than what he's supposed to be. Because I don't understand why a divine being wouldn't be able to say exactly what the prophecy is instead of beating around the bush or using code words that we have to decipher and argue about 2, 3, 4, 5,000 years later. All right? Why wouldn't God just say America? Like, remember what we're talking about. We're talking about an omniscient God who's all knowing. So surely this God would have known that there would be a place called America in the future. So how hard would it have been for him to just tell the writers of the Bible, put America in there? Matter of fact, put the date. It's gonna happen at this. Y'all love to talk about 1948 and 70 AD. Why couldn't those dates be put in the Bible? God didn't know what was gonna happen on those dates. Wouldn't that be much more of a miraculous thing if we read this and it was written 2,000 years ago and it says America and it's got dates for when these things are gonna happen? Just think, man. I tried to get this person who was talking to me about prophecies to think about these things and they just could not do it. They just couldn't wrap their head around this. You telling me God divinely inspired this, then you should be able to show me things in the book that only God would know. Can't tell me it's these things that are in here because people knew about these things. That's why they in there. That's why you don't see the word computer or bomb or car in the Bible, right? These are the things I've confronted people with when we just talking about the divinity of these books. This is a big problem. There's nothing in the books that couldn't have been written by people at that time or couldn't have been known by people at that time. But you don't, even if you don't understand how they knew it, it doesn't matter. That's not important. The question is, could they have known it? Is it possible that they knew about these things? Or that they could have made certain predictions based on what they already knew? If it's possible, then there's no reason to assume that they didn't know it or that God told them these things. Why would I assume that when they're not, there's nothing miraculous about the things that they knew or said? Y'all want to make them miraculous. And the only way you can make them miraculous is if we agree with the way you're interpreting it. If I agree when I see Egypt the house of bondage. If I don't even think that's a correct interpretation, but if we're gonna go with that, I have to agree that that's talking about America today. Why? Why is not talking about Britain or South Africa? You know why? Because people who are spearheading the movement are in America. We the loudest voice for this. This is where it started. One West. So yeah, we seeing it all through our lens. I don't understand Israelites in other places reading these things as if they apply to them. Y'all not in America. Y'all not even where y'all believe you're supposed to be to be part of the prophecy. A lot of inconsistencies, but that's a side note. That's besides the point. Point is, if you want me to accept these prophecies are divine, then they need to be more specific. Simple as that. And you can tell me, oh, you ain't got the spirit, you don't have faith, or whatever I don't have, that's not stopping me from seeing the truth. It's called logic. So before y'all start with that bullshit, I'm telling you what it is. I'm being rational. And it's just a logical conclusion that if this was divinely inspired, I should expect to see things that only a God could have said in this book. Only a God could have known. Shouldn't be things that we have to try to figure out and piece together, argue about whether or not it's actually the case. God could have eliminated all this confusion. This guy who's not the author of confusion, right? Could have prevented all of this by just putting some shit in the Bible that nobody could have known. The word internet. What if the word internet was in the Bible? What if nuclear bomb? All this shit y'all keep saying is gonna happen. Why can't these words, why couldn't he just have said that? What's the point? Because he wanted to confuse certain people, right? That's what y'all gonna say. It's not for everybody to know. You're supposed to go to the elders and the priests. They can explain this to you. All the elders and priests don't agree. So then what? Where you go to then? Shouldn't have to go to anybody. I don't accept that. I shouldn't have to go to a person for them to tell me what it means. And then y'all keep saying y'all's job is to tell people what it means, and then you act as if that's not the same as interpreting it. Y'all crazy, man. To say what the text means when you're breaking it down, you are interpreting it. So you all have a private interpretation. So the interpretations are not convincing. Anybody with a little bit of rational thought process can look at that and say, this could be talking about actual Egypt. Like, y'all are so quick to say it says what it says, as it is written. Y'all will deny that you're interpreting it. You saying you just reading it for what, taking it at face value, even though y'all will also say that there are allegories in there. So that's a whole nother problem. How the fuck you determine what's allegory and what's not? Y'all are reading it as it is when you feel like it. So how do we know that when it says you're going back to Egypt, that that's not exactly what it means? That those people will be going back to Egypt on ships. Tell me why it couldn't possibly mean that. That's what you have to do logically. You have to show why it's logically impossible for it to mean exactly what it says, instead of being some code word for America. You're not going to be able to do that. You're going to limit God, right? You're going to say this was the only way he could do it. This is the best way for him to communicate with people through these confusing, vague predictions, which humans can make. Be clear, humans can make predictions. We only calling them prophecies because there's a religious context to them. Ain't no difference fundamentally between a prophecy and a prediction. Just it depends on who's making it. If they're religious, it's a prediction. If they're not, if they're religious, it's a prophecy. If they're not, it's a prediction. That's the distinction. So people can make accurate predictions. So there's nothing impressive about that. Even if you point to something and say, "Look, this came true. This happened." First, we got to deal with self-fulfilling prophecies or self-fulfilled prophecies. You have to make sure it's not one of those. But even if it came true, then okay, a person made an accurate prediction. Right? How do we rule that out? How do we jump to these conclusions, take these leaps of faith? Saying you got to give rational people a reason to take these leaps with you. Pulling out Deuteronomy 28, that is not proof that I'm an Israelite. Oh, man. You have to do better than that. Why would that be proof that I'm an Israelite? Because some people, if it's actually talking about America, some people who wrote this were right about it. It don't mean therefore God exists and we are his chosen people. No, that's not how it's not a logical chain of thought. Sorry. This is what it is. You want to impress somebody rational, critically thinking, you're going to have to show me something. Show me some exact dates and places. Or tell me why God couldn't have done that. Why he wasn't possible for him to put the exact names and places in these prophecies. Why it wasn't possible for him to put something from the future, literally from the future, in the book, something that nobody had ever even heard of at the time. Like I said, it could have just been one word: automobile, airplane. You know how that would have fucked up everything you could get? What could we say? Like, those would be some either real psychics that wrote that shit, or it would be divinely inspired. We really would have to consider these things. Y'all ain't gave us nothing to make us consider that. There's nothing divine about nothing in that book. You just believe it is. And if you don't agree with what I'm saying, then like I said, show me. Show me anything in there that couldn't have been written by a person. Couldn't have. Not possible. Remember, that's your task. As far as prophecy go, I think I said enough on that. Show me something that only a God could predict. That's how you make that case. It's a prophecy, divine prophecy from God, and there should be something in it that only God would know. Not something that somebody said that just happened to come true. And we can't even say if what they said happened to come true because we don't even know if this is the actual place that they was talking about. I don't know. Hopefully y'all understand what I'm saying and this shit registers with you. I want to hear from you. Got a problem with what I'm saying? Even if you don't, leave a comment, say something, right? Leave me a thumbs up, middle finger, interact. Hit the like, hit the dislike if you disagree. Make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell so you can be notified of all videos that come out. And as always, think while you still can. Peace.
Once again, Swordman. Wake up, wake up, wake up.
What? Yeah.
It's time to wake up.
What?
Mufasa!
Now listen. Here's a brief synopsis. Call me the station where hip hop lives. Just slops monotonous. I send my virus through your flop disk. The spotless.